Supreme Court this week, in response to a petition, said very clearly that schools should not be charging the same number of fees or the same amount of fees if they're going virtual. This was in response to a private school which had moved the Supreme Court because the state government where that school was situated had mandated that schools should reduce their fees, private schools should reduce their fees because they're likely to go into another session of virtual schooling. The Supreme Court sided with what decision the state government had taken, net. Since then, groups of parents have been approaching courts across the country. The Allahabad High Court was approached today after this decision, saying that only tuition fees should be paid. The schools on their side say that they cannot reduce the fees if they need to continue to function in the same way, and they're facing their own stresses. We actually put this question out in an online poll to our viewers and those who follow ET now, and there should be no surprise that 95% said they want to see school fees reduced. But this is not a simple yes or no question or a black and white issue. So we are going to go into the nuance of it all. I'm joined today to speak on this by Surabhi Goel, the CEO of the Aditya Birla Education Trust Schools. Cyrus Vakil, the principal of the Bombay Int'l School, joins us on the show today, as does Ashok Agarwal, who's the national president of the AIPA, that's the All India Parents Association. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for speaking with us here at ET Now. Let me start with you, Mr. Agarwal, and get the parents' perspective. Why do you believe that school fees should be reduced?
You see, the Supreme Court has itself noted in the judgment that during the pandemic, the economic conditions of the parents have gone very bad. Many parents have been thrown out of the job and salaries have been reduced. They are not getting re-employment. All these facts have been noted down by the Supreme Court, and thereafter they said that taking judicial notice of all these facts, we want that school, particularly that case was of the Rajasthan, that school should reduce the fees by 15%. This is what Supreme Court has said. So at least I think this dictum of the Supreme Court should be followed by all the schools in all the countries. At least will give some relief to the parents. So there is nothing wrong, because you see, these schools have already recovered fees, and we all know that they have not paid full salaries to the teachers, and many teachers have been removed from the jobs. And we also know the practice being adopted by these schools, that in the register, what payment of salary is shown is not actually given. And even if it is given, a big part of that is taken back. And our general perception is that at least 15% fees, 50% fees which private schools charge is not justified. So it should have been reduced by 50%. And if that is kept in mind, I think there is nothing wrong with the Supreme Court saying at least 15% you reduce it. And they have also given reason that many routine expenditures you are not incurring. That is also one reason. So they should do it. What is wrong with the judgment?
Okay, so let's get the other point of view. You've talked, Mr. Agarwal, about some schools and certain practices. It wouldn't be fair to paint all schools with the same brush. But let me come specifically to the point of reduction of expenditures on the side of the school and why that can't be passed on. Ms. Surabhi Goel, let me start with your point of view. Why do you think that schools cannot reduce, the fees that are charged, at least for facilities that they just simply cannot provide because children are not coming into schools?
Right. So, Tamanna, thank you for the question. Let me first of all clarify that for most schools, the maximum expense is towards salaries. And I'm not going to get into the debate about, scrupulous schools not paying salaries or showing inflated salaries. So let's park that, because that has nothing to do with the pandemic. But otherwise, the schools, the maximum expenses towards that. Now, most schools want to not just only pay the teachers, they also want to pay the bus didis, they want to pay the mali kaka, they want to pay the people in the cafeteria, they want to pay all their housekeeping staff. So most of the schools are not reducing the expenses. They are trying as far as possible to collect the fees and ensure that all of these people are getting their livelihood. So that is one big chunk of the expenses that happen within schools. Secondly, you need to understand that school is a very expensive proposition. Most schools that are set up take almost 9 to 10 years to even break even. So any young school which is between the 0 to say even 10 or 15 years old, they don't have enough enrollments. So therefore they are struggling. Then you want to reduce the fees. Then there are parents who, of course, because of genuine financial hardships, are not being able to pay the fees. There are so many schools where parents have not been able to pay the fees. And the school is struggling on the cash flow model. So I mean it's and then to have a Supreme Court judgment, and I respect the Honorable Court, but this is true hardship for the schools.
No, but Ms. Goel, I get your point that most of the expenses of the school are on salary, but I will come to you with a follow-up question. What about functions that the school cannot fulfill? What about things like payment for school bus, or for canteen fees, or for using the computer room, or for library? Remember, schools also add on a lot of expenses, and here I'm talking about no school in particular. I'm talking about schools in general. Some schools have these, some schools don't. I'm talking about a larger picture, so this is not personally aimed at anyone, but a lot of schools have add-ons. So those are clearly not being used.
Absolutely. So then most schools have not charged cafeteria fees. They have not charged the bus fees, and in fact gone ahead and paid the fees of the salary of the cafeteria staff. So I totally agree. If the school has not been able to offer it, that's fine. Then see, there is another misnomer. What happens is when a school has buses, they are still paying EMI, they're still paying insurance, they're still paying money to maintain those buses. The salary is only one little part. The fuel is only one little part. And yet most schools in India would have not charged for the bus fees. They have not charged for the cafeteria fees. And if they have, and a parent asks for the refund, then yes, probably it should be given. But where I'm debating is about, small expenses like, electricity ka kharcha nahi hua, so why are we being charged for that? You have to understand that the schools have had to invest heavily into laptops. They may have given high-speed internet connections to their teachers. They have spent so much money on training teachers. We've had all our teachers thrown at the deep end, learning how to, teach on an absolutely new platform. They had to unlearn and relearn how to do this whole thing. And there's so much of investment that has happened on also by, when you're talking about library books, we've, had so many schools, including our school, where we spent a lot of money on digital resources, on being able to buy, exam software, which allows us to, ensure academic honesty, for example. So a lot of these expenses, which did not, exist earlier in an offline model, has, now come up. And we've also, I think most schools have been able to offer, the extracurricular activities online. Again, also because we want to retain those teachers. We want to pay our sports teacher. We want to pay our dance teachers. And therefore, we've collected the fees, and we also ensure that those activities are being conducted online. So, this whole conception about too many,
Cyrus?
That's not really true.
Yeah. No, so listen, this is a discussion which needs every kind of perspective, and perhaps transparency would help. I don't know if many schools have bothered to explain to parents the way Ms. Goel is explaining right now what they spend on and why they need those fees. Cyrus Vakil, as an educator, I know perhaps this whole discussion about fees makes you uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, don't you think it's an important part of the conversation as we're possibly going into another year
I would
of
like to
virtual
make
schooling?
something very clear. Madam, are you listening me? I am audible?
Yes,
Am I
yes.
audible?
Yes, Mr. Vakil.
Yes. Madam is saying EMI about the buses and lot of investments in the school. Let me remove one misnomer that there is a
1 minute, Mr. Agarwal. Mr. Agarwal, I will come to you. Mr. Agarwal, I will come to you. Sir, please don't speak out of turn. See, everyone has not spoken on the panel yet. I will come to you. See, we're taking everyone's point of view here. I'm a parent too. So, we are going to give everyone a point of view. But Mr. Vakil, my question was to you, and I would like you to answer before I go back to Mr. Agarwal for his response to what has been said so far.
Yes. So Surabhi gave a very good list of some of the things that are not being offered and are therefore not typically being charged for, such as kitchen and bus. And at the same time, on a few heads, particularly for IT, costs have actually gone up. Yeah. Net on net, I would say that, because utility bills, for instance, don't have to be paid, things like that. There's probably a very slight reduction in total costs of the school. Certainly not in the order of 15%, perhaps more in the order of about 5%, which honestly, I think what a lot of schools have done is they've not only not laid off teachers, they've given them inflation-adjusted hikes. Now, that might seem very strange to Mr. Agarwal, but the point is, what is the biggest crunch which schools face today? It's a talent crunch, right? We don't, typically schools don't get teachers of the quality they want, particularly in tier 2 and tier 3 towns, but also to some extent in tier 1 cities, yeah? So obviously you don't want to lose good teachers and you want to retain them, and therefore you would want to pay them well and continue to pay them well to retain them, otherwise they go somewhere else. And I think that is the fundamental dynamic of schools today, and schools will simply pass on to their teachers for the good work they are doing an adequate reward. I know we are, and we are doing so despite being a parent-run school, because parents are interested in the quality of the instruction provided and in the transition which teachers are making to an online space, which for a lot of us has been admirable. Teachers have taken the baton and run with it tremendously well, and they deserve to be rewarded, and they are being rewarded. Now, I can't obviously speak for all schools. I can speak for schools that value their teachers and who value the quality of instruction.
Yeah. Another point, which is an important one before I come to you, Mr. Agarwal, is a lot of schools also have a regular increase in fees year on year or after a few years, a graded increase pegged to the increase in costs or increase in inflation, etc. Should those also be reviewed at this time is a big question which needs to be answered. Mr. Agarwal, you wanted to come in and counter some of the points made here. Please go ahead.
I first want to say that during the pandemic, in online education, teachers are working very hard and they must be paid what is due to them on account of salary. There should be no compromise. We are very clear about that. But at the same time, I would like to say that we should not mix a capital expenditure with a revenue expenditure. Schools are entitled to salary. Schools are entitled to fees only on account of this revenue expenditure, not capital. What they are investing on training, what they are investing on buses, what is their EMI. These are not within the area of revenue expenditure. Therefore, it is wrong on the part of the management to cite them for increasing fees or saying that the Supreme Court is not right in reducing this fee. So that is one point. Second is that these laws, the Rajasthan Fee Regulation Act and several other states have brought the laws because there was every year there was exorbitant fees, exorbitant increase in the fees by the schools, and parents were crying against that. Parents have to come to on the roads to fight for that. They have to move to the courts for saying that exorbitant fees are being taken. So these are the all background. This all shows that the trend is not to reduce the fees, but to increase the fees by the schools. And one more point is that these schools are charitable institutions. This is the only area, education is only area in the country where there is a prohibition of commercialization and profiteering. This is the only area. But what is happening by the experience is that the big schools, every year they take so much money from the parents on one account or another, and next year they are coming up with another school. So this is the right time. I think the school should understand the problem of the parents, and they should make an adjustment with that and see that schools are run. We don't want schools to be closed. Schools are run, and parents should also be given relief to that. That is the point. And therefore, we want that this Supreme Court judgment.
I think what matters also is transparency. Miss Goel, let me come to you quickly for a response on this. Over time, and again, I'm not talking about any particular school, but there is an impression that education has become a very commercial business with great returns, with great profits. Schools charge very large amounts of fees, and Indian parents by and large are aspiring to give their children the best, no matter what it costs them. This is a time when everyone is in pain. Some points you made were very valid, that expenses have gone up. Do you think at the very least there could be a transparent communication with parents as stakeholders in the whole process? That look, this is what is costing us, this is what we're saving, this is what we can extend to you.
Yes, so I absolutely agree. To have a transparent and constructive dialogue with the parents is absolutely essential. In fact, what I like to place on record is that the fee, at least in Maharashtra, as per the Fee Regulation Act, is first passed by the PTA. And only then can it be circulated. So the parents are very much part of the decision making as to how much the fees can be increased. Also, there is now a cap. You cannot increase the fees more than a certain percentage every alternate year. So this is already in place now. So what was happening earlier, maybe the schools were increasing fees, to any extent, but that is not happening. Also, I like to point out, coming back to the Supreme Court ruling, which is what we are discussing today. In fact, the Rajasthan government had said that the schools will only be able to collect 60% of the fees. While the Supreme Court has now ruled in favor, saying that no, you can collect up to 85%. Also, to clarify that 85% is only for the fees of 2021. And the Supreme Court has said that the school is free to charge the fees that they usually do for the year 21-22. So let's understand that in a way, the Supreme Court has also been extremely supportive of the school community. And schools are no longer free to charge any amount of fees. That is not true anymore. And ultimately, it's a supply and demand. If a parent wants a school which is charging a hefty fee, it is their decision to make. You can always go to another school which will also be able to offer a good enough education. So it is also
but that's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true. Here, in most cases, good reputed schools are the most sought after. We know of schools where children start registering their parents from the time they are born, and those are the ones everyone aspires for a good education. And the fact is, by law, it's a right for every child in India. It is a skewed system, and I wouldn't say it's in favor of the parents right now.
No, the fees, I'm just saying that the fee structure cannot be unilaterally anymore be decided by the school. There is a cap, at least in Maharashtra, it can't be more than 15% every alternate year, only after taking the majority of the parent-teacher community. So the PTA has a huge role to play, and only if...
No, that is a rule. Last word to you, Mr. Agarwal, on behalf of the parents, because I have to wrap up in another minute or so. Do you think that it's not fair to demonize all schools, that they're out just to, take our money? We should also accept the fact that teachers have had a tough time, schools have had a tough time to at least get going to the extent possible and make sure that children have some sort of a curriculum at these times.
Unfortunate position is in our country is that despite all problems being faced by the parents, they don't want to leave the private school and go to government school. That is the whole problem. And government schools are not performing. And another thing is that the Rajasthan law says that you have to give proposal to the committee, and then committee will examine. But in many other states like Maharashtra, they are allowed by 15%. Why 15%? Why fees is allowed to be increased? Why it is not allowed to be decreased if it is not required? The basic principle is that whatever is actually required by the school, they cannot charge more than that. And in 2007, Supreme Court has said fees has to be justified. There has to be accountability and there has to be transparency. But these principles have not been followed. That is why crises are increasing every day. Now it is the right time, I think, school must understand that they have to help the parents, number one. Second is that the state governments, the government, particularly central government, should bring a law where they should get a power to fix a law, fix a fee, particularly during the period of pandemic. In the Supreme Court judgment,
maybe perhaps during the pandemic, but nothing good has ever come. Nothing good has ever come of the law stepping in or government stepping in to fix prices. It either gets waylaid one way or the other, or it starts impacting quality. So it has to be something which both sides agree on. I think schools also have to take into consideration that parents may have had a tough time. It would be extremely unfair if on top of everything else, children start losing out on their education because of the pandemic. I'm sure no educator wants that to happen either. Well, on that note, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the debate this evening. I want to know what the viewers have thought of this. Please write in to us, find us on our Twitter handles, on YouTube and on Facebook, and tell us what you think about this subject. We'll be back tomorrow with all the latest on the India Development Debate.